Hello and welcome to another X-Ray.Tech video. Today we're going to be talking about how to prepare to automate a process. So if you're working with us or you're working with any automator really, you're going to need to communicate what the process is. So if you have a process that you would like to start to automate, the number one thing you're going to need to start with is repeatability. Do you actually have every step defined? Have you really written a list from 1 to 10 that includes everything that you need to do to create the output that you're trying to create? A lot of times these things are not defined already, and you might be surprised with how long you've been producing something and you haven't created that repeatability. So in order for automation to even begin to enter the conversation, you need to have that repeatability and you need to have that process defined. If you don't have those two things, check out the description below and we'll help you get there. But for now, let's pretend you know exactly what these steps are and you know that you are creating repeatability in your process. If you're doing those two things, we're ready to move forward. Now let's move on to the background of the process. So if you've been performing this process for a couple of years now and you feel like it has some consistent repeatability, communicating with the automator or X-Ray what exactly you are trying to do in the history of the way that you have performed this workflow in the past is enormously helpful. So things like details about the company or the individual departments or people that are involved in the process, being able to communicate that and understand the nuances of the industry or the nuances of your team dynamics, those are all things that will help shape the automation. And this automation really is, it doesn't live in a vacuum, right? It's paired with your process. It is joining your process in a new workflow that you're creating together. So the automator is trying to support the people who are involved in the workflow. And ideally, the people are able to focus on the creative, analytical, strategic, and thoughtful work. But in order to do that, we really need to understand what currently exists and what is the history of the evolution of this workflow, and how can we reduce bottlenecks, reduce any confusion involved in the process to create that consistent, high-quality output that is part of your workflow. Now let's move on to actually outlining your process. So if you have that repeatability, you've communicated the background and the historicals of whatever this workflow is, now it's time to actually outline what exists today and to communicate all of the nuances, the bottlenecks, the people, the software, the systems that exist right now. So outlining your existing workflow from step 1 to step 10, and even communicating whatever automations already exist are going to be really, really helpful for understanding the before and the after. So understanding the baseline of where you are today during this outline is really going to help you understand where you might not be as clear as you think you are right now. Having that comparison of these are the 10 things that people were doing before and these are the 2 things or 3 things that people are doing now is tremendously helpful from a analysis standpoint, right? Are we actually improving and creating more time for the people? When you're outlining an entire process, an entire workflow, you might notice that there's something right here that we could reuse in a different department, or something right here that we're going to want to save and maybe create inside of a presentation or inside of an email. So by putting all of the information into a lucid chart or a flow chart of some kind, so you can see how step 1 flows into step 7, being able to articulate that also highlights opportunity for additional automations or ancillary automations that are going to, again, create more time for the people inside the organization to be able to do creative, analytical, strategic, and thoughtful work. So outlining your automation is a critical step for understanding what is here now, how do we perform this workflow today, and then highlights the opportunities that the automators will be able to spot. So after you outline your existing workflow and you have all of the raw materials really of your workflow and you're ready to start talking about the goals aren't just, I want to save 5 more minutes on this workflow. right? The goals could be really, really specific, and the more specific you're able to get, the better your automator is going to be able to help you achieve those goals. Some goals that we've seen are, yes, I want to save time, but I also want to get this report out to my client that includes this data point that's really far away, and I don't know how to get this data point without manually doing it. Those types of things where you're trying to enrich the output of the workflow really helps the automator understand what pieces of that outline are actually most important, and how can we extract that information from earlier steps in that workflow outline and deliver it inside of the deliverable, the output of the entire workflow. So think about your goals, because a lot of times they're a lot more than time, and time is sort of an ancillary result of implementing automation that's just going to save time. Robots will always type faster than people, right? But what's the tangible result that you're trying to create besides time? Because a lot of times those results can be a lot more valuable than time. So think about the outcomes that you want to create with this workflow and leave the specifics to us. Ultimately, at X-Ray, we believe that the best form of collaboration comes through a membership model, and that really lets us get into the weeds when it comes to our members. We understand their business, we understand their processes, and constantly are recommending new things that could be helpful in their workflows. So I hope this video has been helpful for at least outlining and understanding what enables an automator to do what automators do. And if there's anything else you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to cover new topics on the show. As always, links and resources are in the description down below. And don't forget, keep the flow.